topic. So you didn't have to move your chairs back, but if you have, that's fine, or you can stay where you are. Anybody want to volunteer
sitting on the floor
first to come up and very briefly in 2 or 3 sentences tell what group you are, what you have concluded, and where are we going from there?
Start with foreign policy.
Start with foreign policy, I was told. Okay. Let me say also, before you all leave, we would like to end this with a soapbox in which certain people come up to the mic if they choose and tell their personal stories as women and what they've gone through and how they've risen above the obstacles. So starting with foreign policy, who will be your spokesperson? Great.
Okay. All right. In our group in foreign policy, we did talk a bit about. Okay, is everyone ready or? Okay, thank you. In our foreign policy group, we discussed a few different issues as related to foreign policy. One of them, which may seem in a way like a domestic policy issue, but it was veterans issues. And one of our group members is a former member of the military, and she spoke about some of the difficulties that veterans face with finding jobs and just a lot of different issues going on there. And she said that Bernie was a member of the Vets Armed Services Committee? Okay, the Vets Armed Services Committee, and that he backs up the regular military members, the rank and file, not just sort of, the affluent defense contractors, but that he will actually stand up for just the average Joes and Janes in the military. We also spoke about some of the issues going on in the Middle East, and one thing that we all seemed to have a consensus on was that Bernie had a lot of foresight in a lot of the foreign policy votes that he took in terms of voting against the Iraq War. He basically, right at the time that the vote was taken, he spoke about how it would cause a lot of instability and basically all the problems that we're seeing now. So he actually, a lot of people at that time, including Hillary Clinton, were all, voting to go to war, but he was actually one who made an unpopular decision, which turned out to be right. And, and one of the people in the group said that she was canvassing in Iowa, and that was one issue that a lot of the Hillary supporters and a lot of undecided Democrats or unaffiliated voters had said was a big issue for them. I think a lot of people, they're looking for somebody that's tough, yet it seems like, Bernie sort of went against the grain, even though it was unpopular, but he was right in the end. So it shows that he has, good judgment and foresight in that area. He also has called for the regional powers in the area to take a greater role in dealing with ISIS, and also to taking a greater role in refuting the kind of ideologies that lead to ISIS. We also talked about how Bernie does not have an economic stake in some of the foreign policy issues that we're dealing with. A lot of candidates receive a lot of funding from defense contractors, from various elements of the military-industrial complex, I guess you could say. Hillary does have a lot of dark money that's tied to some of these issues, and Bernie in this area is pretty squeaky clean compared to most. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Well, we're just gonna.
Yes, it's another one, that he supports a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine, which compared to most candidates running in either of the two major parties, probably seems to be the most just and fair solution in the Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories.
That's enough.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful. We're just going to go in a circle. Circle and the person with spokesperson for racial justice by reading. I'm reading it right. I'm blind. Come on up here and talk about that for just a few minutes. A couple sentences, 3 sentences, whatever. Discuss.
Oh, that's a good reason.
It's my fault.
Okay, this is definitely working. We had,
Let's get the microphone.
It's fine.
it was really interesting to, meet all of the presenters, the attendees who decided to attend our racial justice group. We had some students who are from the suburbs they got involved because of their AP government class inspires them, and they are gonna continue to be politically active, which is great, and inspire their parents and their friends. We had a woman from downstate talk about issues that she faces with her family is Muslim, and she had I'm gonna tell her story was that her husband and son were going to mosque on Friday and had to have police accompany them for their own safety. So it's shocking that would happen in our state. And we had some longtime activists. We talked about BDS, which stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions. That's the very important movement against the Israeli apartheid, the problem of the attack on Palestinians. And we had an activist who's active in Beverly, and she works with Black musicians, and she told us about an upcoming show on Saturday. That sounds really fun. So we had a pretty interesting group. We are all concerned with the racially charged use of the word terrorism, which Bernie is one of the few elected officials that does not stoop to that level. And we talked about standing together and being a voice for what's right. So definitely encourage all of us to be doing that. Our 2 asks for the Bernie campaign are we need to have a state coordinator. We need to have a state coordinator to bring everyone together and help keep our message strong. We need to have a state coordinator with a state office. And secondly, we need to bring Bernie to Illinois to talk to minority communities. He's been here before. Where did he go? He went to Lincoln Park. He came back. Where did he go? University of Chicago.
But he's also been to Headbush.
He's been back. That's terrific. That's terrific. I was not aware of that. So that is great. But we want Bernie to come back now because of the pressing issues that are happening now in our minority communities. The issues with Rahm Emanuel. He is the only one that does not stand with Rahm, that stands with us to say Rahm needs to step down.
Yep.
The cover-ups continue. They've got to go. That is why Bernie must come here to make sure all of our communities know where he stands. He needs to come here, speak with Black ministers, Black business leaders, and not just African American community, but also Latinos too. And we think that we could be doing that also, make sure that we are speaking with Latino communities, which were not represented in our group. But so those were our big asks.
Thank you. Somebody asked me, what?
Economic inequalities there.
Yeah, I know. Somebody asked me how they would communicate with the campaign, and what I do is go to Shannon, who's the top person I know, Shannon at BernieSanders.com, and just besiege him with your comments about him coming here and how important it is. I don't think he really realizes it. So now we have income inequality next.
No, I didn't.
Thank you.
Preaching to
Hello.
people wherever.
Because we had such a short amount of time, we basically focused on action items that we could take. I'm going to share those with you. We're talking with people. It's important to eliminate the differences between Hillary and,
Illuminate.
illuminate, thank you. I didn't take the, illuminate the differences between Hillary and Bernie in economic policy. Educate people on democratic socialism. A lot of people are confused, they think it's a bad thing, but we need to educate them. Register as many people as possible. We need to get all those Democrats registered. Do big rallies and flyering and such, but also small scale coffee socials. You can just take a friend out to lunch and have a few people over to your house to spread the word. It can be small scale, get all the people in there. Advocate for the voiceless. Hand out things to people that are working minimum wage jobs, you know, buttons, business cards at restaurants and stores, and actually somebody, and I know other people have been doing this, if you can afford to, and you're at a restaurant, leave a $15 tip and write Feel the Burn, supporting $15 minimum wage. All right. Provide training for people who want to talk about Bernie's policies to help them to get some more information. I know it's very important that we just talk from our hearts as to what we feel, but sometimes we get into discussions where we need to have, you know, more facts. So get training to educate people on that. And of course, keeping ourselves informed and up to date. As females, we need to let people know that we support Bernie. It's, as somebody said, you don't vote for someone just because they have a vagina. Have a pamphlet that has bullet points about the economic things that Rebecca had brought up, how, you know, if 1/10 of 1% of our country, if they paid their fair share of taxes, there'd be enough money for everybody at free college tuition. You know, things about the New Deal and the WPA, how we can make that work. So having pamphlets that have all the economic pieces in them to give to people, make it very easy to read. Things like hunger versus military spending. And the last, we talked about young people earlier today. In our group, we had somebody who's a junior in high school, and her friend, who's a junior in one of the other high schools in Champaign, has started a Students for Sanders group in her high school. And the person who's here is going to do that in her high school and try to set up the registering in the high school so that we can get our young people mobilized. Thank you.
Healthcare is next. Here we go again. Did I pull it out again?
Oh, yeah, you did. Yeah.
We recorded it. Really? Totally uncoordinated, sorry.
All right, so we started by telling stories to each other about our experience with healthcare in this country and decided that healthcare is broken. It needs a lot of improvement, even with some improvements that came from Obamacare. Some of those include the fact that healthcare in this country is tied to employment, which means if you have an abusive employer, you can't leave. It means we've got employers dropping people down to part-time work so they don't qualify for healthcare. It means that people sometimes have to pay more for premiums for healthcare than they're actually making in the jobs they're in, et cetera. We talked about narrow networks, that as hospitals or employer and insurance companies fight, they drop different providers, and so you may have a relationship with a physician that you need to maintain, and all of a sudden they're no longer in your network. We talked about rising premium costs, and we talked about the fact that providers feel more like business people now, fighting with insurance companies and having to have full-time people on staff to do that rather than providing healthcare. Fortunately, there's a state solution and also the solution with Bernie Sanders. We have a state single-wide payer bill called House Bill 108. Which is flowers in Illinois, and which for the first time was voted out of committee this last session. Anyone who's interested in that, and this is actually a group that is focused on Bernie Sanders also, but anyone who's interested in that side, there is something called Illinois Single Payer Coalition, which you can Google, and that's a good way to interface and get on the action alerts around that bill. But additionally, Bernie Sanders has for decades been fighting for Medicare for all. Right, for taking what is a partial single-payer system in this country and actually expanding it, protecting it from the attacks from the right wing, getting private insurance hands out of it, right, because they're chipping away at it right now, and making sure that everything is covered so that people don't end up with too much out of pocket. That's something that Bernie Sanders is absolutely committed to, and we need people to make that connection. So things to do, probably the most important is when you walk into work and you see a little leaflet up that says so-and-so's daughter has cancer and we're doing a fundraiser or a potluck, right, to raise money for their medical bills, bring up Bernie Sanders. Bring up the fact that he's the solution to that, right? Healthcare is something everybody has a story about in their own families where they've been wronged by the insurance industry. We need to make sure that that fire they have in that belly about that experience gets connected to Bernie Sanders.
That was wonderful. I think climate is next. Is that correct? Did I read right? Do we have a climate group? Or healthcare?
No, that was.
No, we did healthcare. Okay.
You're a little behind on time.
Your climate, right?
I'm climate.
Okay. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me okay? Great, okay, so climate change. Carbon and methane are two of the major contributors, contributing greenhouse gases that are causing climate change. In Illinois, we have a fleet of aging coal plants, some of which are or have been, or are in the process of being converted to gas-fired plants, which will only encourage more fracking nationwide. There are also quite a few contained animal feeding operations statewide that are other sources of methane. And we know that Bernie has had a long-standing commitment to combating climate change. He's the only candidate to submit a bill that will tax carbon. And how does this translate, though, to outreach? A lot of people don't, especially if you're trying to put food on the table, you might be a lower income family. It's really hard to talk about climate change if you're not feeling those effects directly. One of the ways that we can help, talk to people, there's a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of coal plants nationwide. A lot of these plants are located in communities of color or low income communities. A lot of these folks are suffering real damaging health effects like asthma, respiratory illness, COPD, heart problems. These can be exacerbated by the pollutants coming from these plants. Even if it's not carbon, it could be sulfur dioxide and other issues. So just having conversations with these folks, making those connections can help them understand that they might want these coal plants shut down. Another thing that will resonate with people, though, is jobs. Bernie Sanders is supporting renewable energy jobs from, as Nadia mentioned, solar panels, manufacturing, wind turbines. There's a whole green energy economy. The coal industry is in a nosedive right now. So focusing on having these renewable energy jobs now is really important. Jobs is something that we can use to connect to people, whether they are somebody that is low income or even our conservative friends. Everybody likes to hear about jobs. Every election that I remember, jobs has been a #1 issue to talk to people about. So talking about jobs, I think, is something we can just be mentioning to people when we're out canvassing or handing out flyers or even trying to get petitions signed. So I think that's, and also talking about ending coal subsidies. When I'm talking to conservatives in particular, not to be putting labels on people, but nobody likes to be doing handouts to people that are big corporate polluters. So I think leveling that playing field for the renewable energy industry is something that we can talk to a lot of folks about. So that's about it. So sorry for rambling. Thank you. Bye.
That was wonderful. These are so inspiring. We have one group education left. But before you speak, I want to say that what I'm standing here and thinking, this is one damn smart bunch of people and supporters. That's it. That's all I want to say. Come on up. Thank you for all your intelligent comments.
Education. Many kids come into college unprepared and not at a college level education. They have to take remedial classes. 2-year college takes longer. Costs more paying for classes that don't count as college credit. So Bernie Sanders, I'm pretty sure, you've all heard of his fantastic free education thing. I think as a student personally, I'm pretty excited about that because college tuition is probably one of the biggest things we're worried about right now. Even 12-year-olds are pretty much afraid of this. It's just scary. But I think Bernie has the best policies of the education thing. And as to prove it, if you look up Bernie Sanders education on Google, there's like quotes that say, for instance, he says, "We are moving in exactly the wrong direction in higher education. 40 years ago, tuition in some of the great American public universities and college was virtually free. Today, the cost is unaffordable for many working class families. Higher education must be a right for all, not just wealthy families." And if you Google Trump education, you just get this lovely picture of Trump's hair like this. This was not fabricated, by the way. We're hoping that Bernie Sanders' policies will have more funding for, I don't know what this counselors, because that's also a very vital part of education. We want discussion-based learning, so it's more like liberal, I guess, instead of just, oh, learn this, and here's your education, here's your degree. And college for all ACT scores, I think is what it says. I think that's important because I feel like everyone should have a secondary education, no matter, because you deserve a second chance. No matter what. Yeah, I think I'm done.
Well, I always do something wrong. I missed a group, immigration. Where are you?
Our spokesperson isn't here, so we were kind of learning from her. I can.
Come on up and just say, we're very.
I really don't know much about it. I mean, I can tell you. I can tell you like an idea that I had, but I was trying to learn from our. I forget her name. She left.
Sorry, I just had an idea, and I think this is kind of far-fetched and half-baked, but I was thinking, and the reason that I went over to this group is because I was concerned that a big problem in our country, and maybe in lots of countries, is that a lot of us lack empathy. And I had experienced something recently which kind of made me think that this is a good way to try and get people to empathize with other groups, no matter what group you're trying to raise awareness about. It was a product that my student brought me, and it was this headset that allowed you to look at, it's called Google Cardboard, but there's lots of different versions of it. It allows you to look at 360 videos online and turn around and see the whole scene. So they shoot the video in 360, and so the one that he brought me was just endangered animals in Africa. So it was like an elephant coming up to my face, and it was really like moving. And then I had seen another one that was for a charity for bringing water to Ethiopian villagers. And so this was like a girl whose mom had died, and it takes you into their village and shows you that she's trying to take care of her 2 younger siblings. And anyway, you just really like jumped into their situation. And I don't know if it's possible to try to develop 360 videos for some of these issues, like immigrants coming into this country, but even just have like a website where you're able to look at these videos. Google Cardboard is like, I don't know, it's like, look it up, it's very, very cheap, maybe like $10 or something like that. You get it, you assemble it yourself, you put your smartphone in it, and it automatically just starts working, and then you're able to see, again, the 360 view of it. So if you Google YouTube search 360 video, charity water, you'll see the one that I saw from Ethiopian villagers, but I'm wondering if there's some way that we could get 360 videos developed for some of these, like let's say you're jumping into, what are some topics that would be good to have people empathize with that we've been talking about today? People that are suffering from our current healthcare system, and how that could possibly change if we were under Bernie's policies. Obviously, immigrants that are, in the situations they are. So again, this is totally like stream of consciousness. I didn't think of this before I even walked into this room. So I'm trying to think of something to say because I'm apparently our spokesperson.
Anyway, thank you.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say real quick is that my school, Maine East High School, is that I teach at. We have a group that is doing what's called a hunger banquet, and And they're going to employ this method to try, we're raising money for villagers in Kenya. So they're going to actually have a station in the hunger banquet, which is a big fundraiser. So you come into the hunger banquet and you get a ticket. Half or 20% of you are from the developed world and you sit at the table and you eat really good food. And then 80% of you are from the developing world and you have to sit on the floor and hunt around for stale chips. And you pay lots of money. Well, at least the people that can afford it do. The students get low rates for the dinner tickets, but to play one of these roles. And if you're from the developing country, then you go around to different stations and you have to do simulations, like your child just died because you drank water that was contaminated by X, Y, or Z. And so you have to put a black veil on your head. The next station, you have to go down 3 flights of stairs and get a bucket of water and bring it up here and share it. But we're going to put a little bit of salt in it to represent that we had saltwater intrusion due to overpumping of groundwater. So then there might be a station where there's the Google Cardboard, and you have to actually jump into the lives of Kenyan villagers and try to experience what they're experiencing. If that's out there, I don't think the video exists, but we might try to make it exist. Yes.
Have a lot of people signed up for this?
No, because my students, I have students that are going to do this for their year-long service learning project, and they haven't gotten that far yet. Yeah, so it's probably going to be in April or May, and if anybody's interested, you can talk to me and learn more about from our website when it's going to be, I guess. So.
Can I make an additional comment on immigration up front here?
Yes.
I won't be very long.
Because that was not enough about immigration.
Well,
Yeah, actually, I really wished I could have joined multiple groups in this room, but there wasn't enough of me. But I want to add something on the immigration element. My father having been an immigrant as well, but I'm not going to go too much into that. But I think one really good talking point when you run up against somebody who has prejudice or starts spouting about, jobs being taken away and this and that, I think it's really good to remember that our democracy was renewed by every time we had a new wave of immigrants. It's really good to remember, and maybe you ought to say this to them. Well, we have the Statue of Liberty. What is that symbol of the statue for? We received it for what reason? For people not who were in this country and already settled citizens, but for those coming to this country. And those are the people who are seeking economic justice. Those are the people who are seeking civil rights protection. Those are the people who are actually the ones who renew the basis of democracy in this country. And so in a sense, really, they are a gift to us to remind us. And remember, I'm from the Reagan greed is good generation who kind of forgot all this stuff, is that they're here to renew the fact that we live in a world where we have to renew democracy where it's possible. They come from countries where it's not possible. They're doing us a tremendous favor, a tremendous service by putting themselves out on the line and fighting for the right to be citizens, fighting for women's rights that they don't get in their own country. I think it's very important to remind, so maybe some of these people have immigrants in their background, what was it like for your dad to maybe have only one piece of bread a day? Let's think about these things because they're right back with us. And we have to realize they're doing us a great service. All of us here are doing a great service to do it, but they're also pushing forward because their need is great, because they understand democracy is so precious, so precious. Okay, so I think immigrants are really, a great boon to our economy and our society and our spirit in that respect. Thank you.
Okay, that was, every comment has been phenomenal. It's really, the time is up, but I have one request so we can end it a certain way. We don't have time for a lot of personal stories. I would like one person to give a personal story where they absolutely encountered discrimination because they're a woman. We're just going to take one because our time is up. I mean, blatant, and she's got her hand up. I don't know who to pick. I think she had Is that okay? You want to come up and tell your story? I mean, we're talking about not just the inequality, et cetera, but blatant discrimination because of her sex. And then we will end it and say, thank you so much for coming.
Well, I just am a veteran. I spent 10 years on active duty in the U.S. Army, and when I left the service and I came home, I experienced a lot of discrimination, not only because of my sex, but because I'd served in the military. And I have been able to overcome it. I am employed now, but I'll tell you one thing, when you're a veteran, and I was 4.5 years overseas, and I came home and tried to find a job, it was very, very hard. It's not easy for veterans to try to reintegrate back into society. There's a lot of perceptions that a veteran is conservative, wants war. That's not the case. But I do want to say that but right now the suicide rate for veterans is 22 per day, and that's from all the eras. It's 22 people per day, a veteran who feels like they have no choice but to commit suicide. 22 per day. And that's a number that needs to be remembered. I'd like to mention a website called votevets.org. They are very supportive of the Democrats, and I think particularly Bernie. I don't want to say, I'm not sure exactly, but they are a Democrat. So supporters who are veterans. And one thing is that I know a lot of veterans feel that the next commander-in-chief, the commander-in-chief of the armed services, the president of the United States, the next commander-in-chief needs to be Bernie Sanders.
Okay, real quick.
I've had like 20 jobs,
Okay, go ahead, take the mic.
and part of my interview is, are you having any children or are you married?
Okay, well, that says it. I want to thank you all on behalf of Shauna and myself and Jack for coming today. And it's wonderful that you're here. And as I said before, such an intelligent bunch of people. I think maybe we need more people involved with Bernie that are like you, and we have to get the word out. I know we feel passionately about him, and we have to make sure everybody else does. So with that, I just, again, thank you so much for participating in this. Thank you.
Back.